Welcome to the Present Fathers Podcast. This is the show that focuses on climbing the mountain of fatherhood together. We believe that dads matter. That's why this show is for you. So gear up, dads. Get ready. It's time to start climbing. Hey, everyone. How's it going? My name is George. This is the Present Fathers Podcast. I am joined with Justin, Dustin, and Brandon, the standard crew. And tonight we have two special guests. The first is Jeremy Harrell, who is our first ever guest on the show, and now he is the first repeat guest on the show. So we're super pumped to have Jeremy back. And he's also joined by his partner in crime at Veterans Club, Ronnie Knuckles. And Ronnie is the Chief Operating Officer at Veterans Club. So let's dive in. Ronnie, introduce yourself. You're the newest guest. You're the newest member of the show, and we're really thrilled you're here. And our discussion tonight will be kind of talking about our culture and how we as dads can play a positive impact on that. But let's kick it over to Ronnie. Let's hear from you, and then we'll kind of open it up from there.
Yeah, well, nice to meet you guys. First of all, thank you for having me on, inviting me on. It's great to be here. So, as you mentioned, my name is Ronnie Knuckles. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I kind of started my professional career there and served a few tours in Afghanistan with 5th Battalion, 11th Marines. Following that, I got out, got a vocational diploma and a bachelor's degree, and still didn't really know what I wanted to do. Wound up in industrial maintenance, became an industrial maintenance supervisor, which eventually led into becoming an engineering manager. During that time, I had kind of started some side businesses, one of them being junk removal, a junk removal business called Sergeant Junket, which is like, if you're familiar with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, we're a local competitor to them. And through that business is how I kind of got connected with Veterans Club. We did some disaster relief in Louisiana, actually, following Hurricane Laura. We sent crews down. Veterans Club partnered with us in that, sending supplies and people down. And then from there, we just kind of started to build this relationship. We did some disaster relief in Western Kentucky. We had some major tornadoes come through in 2021. And then Jeremy kind of snuck in an invite to be on the board during that trip. And God was good, and I got on the board, and that kind of turned into me becoming the COO recently, this past month, actually. So that's kind of my professional background. I'm a dad. I have a wife. We've been married for about 8 years now, and then I've got 3 kids. I've got my oldest is 5, Owen, and my middle is 4, Hudson, and my youngest is 2, Emerson. So I've got 3 under 5 in the house. It's crazy. Yeah, if I tilted my
you're a brave man.
If I tilted my camera down on this computer, you would be able to see all of the toys surrounding me right now. So it's fun. It's crazy at times, but yeah, man. So that's kind of me and my background.
Awesome. Well, Ronnie, I think we're getting an echo here. Hang on. All right, test. We're getting an echo? Okay. Not sure how we're getting an echo, but anyway, we're all good now. So, Ronnie, we are very thrilled that you're here. Thank you for joining. And I'm glad Jeremy kind of plucked you and got you involved with his organization. Jeremy, can you give us an update on how things have been for Veterans Club and what's new? I think I saw on Instagram you guys have a new, I don't know if service is the right thing to call it, but a new program coming out very soon. So give us an update on all things Veterans Club.
Yeah. Thank you all for having me on again, man. I really do love this platform. I love what you all are doing, and not just a guest, but a fan. So just thanks for that. But yeah, we've been really busy since the last time we talked, and you mentioned it's been about 7 months, and it seems like a couple weeks ago, to be honest. That's just kind of how life goes. But yeah, we're getting ready to start. Obviously talent acquisition, right? When I worked with Ronnie on the Western Kentucky flood relief project, man, he didn't know it, but he was being evaluated the whole time, right? Because that's just that's what a good recruiter and a good leader does. And so, I mean, his leadership, his passion, especially his passion to serve, his passion for Christ, that's not something you find all the time, to be honest. I mean, you can teach somebody anything, but you can't necessarily teach passion. And so when I realized he wanted to serve and help people, I knew that he'd be a good fit for what we're doing. So I'm glad he's there. It's helping me tremendously because we're growing so quickly. Just like you said, George, we're getting ready to start what I consider, I have a biased opinion, a really cool program called the Resilient Mind. And what we're trying to do is, we've been so laser focused on working with veterans and first responders who have dealt with a lot of stuff, right? Whether it be, PTSD, divorce, other life challenges. And we've been really effective at doing that. But what we wanted to do next was take those folks who have overcome things, right? Who have got on the other side of the stuff, but had dreams and ambitions of things they wanted to do before all that come into play. We want to ask them, now that they're on the other side of these things and are able to still do life, and say, what is it that you wanted to do? And many of them like, well, I wanted to be a business owner, or I want to be a better father or a better mother, or, it could be anything, whatever it looks like for them to level up. We want to help get them there. Right. So not only do we want to help them get out of that dark hole that really, troubled time and overcome challenges, we want to take them to the next level once they do, because, I just think there's nothing more empowering than to, be in the darkness, come out of the darkness, use that as a tool in order to be successful on whatever level they want to be. So the Resilient Mind program will be built off of discipline. And like I mentioned earlier, we will finish tomorrow the 75 Hard program. It's a program designed by, Andy Frizella from First Form. It is what it is, right? It's 75 and it is hard. So it's 75 days of doing 2 workouts, 2 45-minute workouts. They must be 3 hours apart. One must be outdoors, regardless of elements. You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book each day. You can't use an audio book, right? Because efficiency is not what we're trying to do here. You have to choose some sort of diet, something that kind of makes you suffer. And then, you have to, take a progress picture of yourself. You don't have to share that with anybody. And then no alcohol, right? So, like we're on 74. And the reason why we wanted to do this will be part of the curriculum for the program that we developed, because we believe that, in order to overcome challenges, you need to be disciplined. Motivation just simply isn't enough, right? It's a fleeting emotion. We're not always motivated, but we always still have to go out and put one foot in front of the other and do the best for our families. And we're trying to instill that into the folks who are participating in this program. And we believe that if we can help these folks become comfortable in suffering, right, that nothing else will be able to rock them in their life. If they can really find joy, like we're told to do in Scripture, in the midst of trial and tribulation, what can happen to them, right? What is it that the enemy can do? So, we're working, a lot of it's faith-based. Obviously, that's what we are, faith-based organization, but we're really just trying to create an opportunity where veterans can level up. So we've done good at bringing them out of that dark place, getting them stabilized, getting them, back into society, however they see fit, getting them connected with their families, restoring families, all that good stuff. But now we want to help them get to where they dreamed of being before all this stuff happened. So that's the newest program. But again, we have 7 other nationally recognized programs. Our equine program is probably what we're most known around the country for, and that's still going strong. We're continuing to expand, to different agencies and things like that. So everything that we've been doing, we're still doing, but it's on a larger scale now. We're starting to go across the country and talk to folks who want to partner or recreate like a chapter of what we have here in other states. And so it's been a heck of a ride, man. And I'm never going to complain about having too much to do. But I'm just, I just sometimes, pray and say, God, I don't know who you think I am, but you're bringing it, right? You're bringing a lot of opportunity, but it's all good stuff. And just glad to have Ronnie in there to help, run the ship, so to speak. But yeah, everything's good, man. Just growing every day and doing the things. We helped over 2,300 veterans last year, in one way, shape, or form. And so we're really proud of that number. I mean, over the course of, 5, almost 6 years, we've helped, thousands and thousands of veterans all around the country. And we just want to continue to grow that number. We want to continue to reach as many people as possible. And, yeah, just glad to be on the show. Glad to be talking to you all to get to talk about what it's like to be a dad these days and all that good stuff. So thanks, man, for inviting me on.
Yeah, of course. We're obviously super thrilled to have you back. And man, 2,300, that's a lot of people in 1 year. So
Yes,
that's pretty
yes.
impressive. And this new program sounds awesome too. So I think Justin had a question about you're at the end now of this 75-day challenge. What are some of your personal results?
Man. So this question I've been thinking about, for several weeks. Well, one thing I can tell you for sure is I'm 26 pounds down. So that's, I mean, I'm pretty excited about that, man. It's really, I should know this. I think we all kind of intellectually know it, but it's amazing how much difference that is in how you feel. When you think about 26 pounds, it's like a smaller, dumbbell in the gym. But when you take that off your joints and your back and your hips and 42 years old, you take that off the table and you just almost feel like a brand new man. So, that's definitely a positive, result of this program. And additionally, it has forced me to read more, which I didn't necessarily do. Although I do love to read. I would go when I serve at Mighty Oaks. I still serve there as a team leader, and when I would go there, the guys are talking about all these books they're reading, right? And so I'd look at them and go, "How do y'all have time to read books? Like, how do you read 5 books in 6 months? Like, how do you do that?" And they're like, "Well, I'm glad you asked because we need to sit down and talk about that." But it really forced me to read, and not only did I read, other non-faith based books about leadership, but I was in the Word more. And man, I can't even tell you the impact that it's had on me. And just when you think, like, if you would have asked me 75 days ago whether or not I felt like I was in the Word enough, I would have said, yeah, I think so. But man, I don't know that we're ever in the Word enough. You know what I mean? I think if we ever think we are, I think we're kind of, we're kind of deceiving ourselves, because when you hang out and camp out in the Word, life is just different, and you're just always armed with these, with the defense against our common enemy out there, man. So yeah, that's another good thing about it. And of course, my gut health, when you're not eating, junk constantly on the run, my gut health has been better. Things that I thought I had wrong that wasn't being diagnosed as far as GI goes went away. Also, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Inflammation, right? That fancy word, inflammation. I had a lot of that, right? My joints, stuff that went away too. So, yeah, man, just a really, really good program. I think it's really going to be beneficial for a lot of folks out there. And I really believed, and this may have been a little bit, sometimes I think we can think we're better than we are in a lot of ways, but I thought, well, I don't really need this. I don't really have a problem with discipline. And it wasn't the discipline that I needed, but it was all the other things, right? It was more time in the Word. It was more time management, because you got to factor in a couple extra hours of your day, because you got 2 workouts and you got to do that on top of being a dad and, on top of doing, your stuff with your job, your career. So it really makes you, think about, wait a minute, I'm scrolling on TikTok here too long, right? Like, I don't have time for this. And it just really kind of creates a good opportunity for you to get off of those things and focus on stuff that's productive. So I have nothing but good things to say about it. I'm glad I did it. I don't need to do it twice, to be honest. And it's not because it's hard. I think I've learned. I'm very proud that I learned the first time on most things, right? Not all things, but especially in the dad realm. But as far as this goes, I think my military background has helped me, pretty much catch on quickly. But yeah, great program, man. I can't wait to see what it does in the lives of others who do it.
Awesome. Ronnie, did you do it too?
Yeah, so this is my 3rd time around doing it. First time I failed at about day 56 and had to start back over. Second time I finished it, and this last time here I'll be finishing. I'm down about 43 pounds total from first go around into the end of the third go around here. So I may try to do the full year-long program. We'll see. The rest of the phases are only 30-day increments. So, we'll see how that goes. They are punishing. They are more punishing as you progress through the program. So we'll see how that goes, and running the Resilient Mind program that we're going to roll out. So anyway, Yeah, it's to Jeremy's point. I don't have anything to prove now. I've proved to myself I could do it. So we'll see how it goes with the rest of the program. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The good habits that you've developed, like that the good things that you want to do or you need to do, they take effort. And I think the greatest thing about these kind of programs is that it pushes you to make enough self-care for that effort, and then once you realize the benefits, you kind of incorporate it moving forward, even though you're not maybe doing it as hard as a 75 hard, after those 75 days, you might still be incorporating, hey, eating healthier makes me feel better, or, diving into the word makes me feel more connected, and that kind of thing. So like, those are the kind of things I've heard. And I agree wholeheartedly. It's almost like when you're in baseball and you're swinging that bat with the weight on it and it's super heavy, and then you go up to the bat with nothing on it. You feel like you just knock something out of the universe. So I feel like that's the same way with the 75 hard. I've actually kind of been forced into doing it myself, just because of my health.
Okay.
So my
Yeah.
cholesterol's a complete dumpster fire. So I've incorporated a lot of exercise and good eating, but either way, congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. I appreciate it. One other takeaway, man, is that, there were times through this process, as you can imagine, where I would get, pretty frustrated, not because of the difficulty, but there were certain instances where I thought it was kind of annoying, right? Because, I've been running Veterans Club for almost 6 years, man. I just been doing it. I haven't been, paid to do that, and I've spent probably over 400 days over the past 6 years on the weekends doing it. And so discipline hasn't ever been a real thing. But one thing that I noticed is that this program forced me to think about myself, right? And I think a lot of times as men and fathers, we put ourselves on the back burner, right? Because we just believe that it's our duty really to kind of be sacrificial for our families. And that's a really noble thing. But what I learned is you can do both, right? If you put enough effort into it, if you get off the phone and quit scrolling and quit getting lost in reels, and you really start to focus on your life, you can actually do both. Because that was always the trade-off for me. I'd go, I'm not worried about me. I just want to do these things for people, right? God calls me to serve. He calls me to go out and spread the gospel and share the gospel and do those things. And who cares about me, right? And so, and I think the military had a little bit to do with that too, because it's never about us; it's about a team. But in reality, people would tell me, over the course of several years, like you have to take care of you before you can take care. I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard it 1,000 times. I think we're all in the same boat. But what it did is it really forced me to take care of myself, and I wasn't used to that. So it was almost frustrating at times, because it's like, I don't really care about working out twice. Like, I have so much to do. I have to get these programs running. I have to go to these meetings. I have to do all these presentations, whatever it is, prepare for speaking engagements. And I'm filming 3 documentaries right now. So all that kind of stuff. But man, I do appreciate now that I really, gave myself those 2 hours a day, essentially, to just focus on my health. So it was a real eye opener in the way that sometimes we believe, and society will sometimes make us believe, that it's not about us, that we shouldn't think about us, that we should think about others. And that's partly true. But again, if we're not healthy, then we're not going to be healthy to help anybody else be healthy. So I think that was the biggest takeaway and eye opening thing for me, is that, it's okay. Don't feel guilty about taking care of you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hey, we got a comment from the Rack Talk podcast for those only listening later on Spotify. Denzel Washington said, "Dreams without goals are just dreams, and they ultimately fuel disappointment. Goals on the road to achievement cannot be achieved without discipline and consistency." It's a really good quote, and I think that ties in pretty well to what you were just saying there, Jeremy, about, I love to say, where motivation ends, that's where discipline begins. Because,
Yes.
On the good days, it's really easy to be a rock star, right? But it's in your rough days is when you have to really buckle down, and that discipline has to take over. So thanks for the comment. Appreciate the input from the Peanut Gallery, and that was a really good one right there for those just listening. So I think, Dustin, you were still driving home, so welcome back to the show in person now on camera. And I think you had a thought or a question you wanted to bring up, kind of diving in now to the meat of our discussion. about culture, something to do with ableism. So why don't you take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. How's my mic? Okay.
Yeah, you're a little low. I'll turn you up, but just
Okay.
go ahead and keep ripping it.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jeremy, Ronnie. Great to meet you both. I'm excited to chat. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, nice
Yeah.
to meet you, man. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So one of the big things my wife is always telling me, stop being a martyr. Because I'll do the same thing you said. I'll say, oh,
Yeah.
I don't need to take care of myself. I'm just a guy. And that's absolutely incorrect. If you're not firing on all cylinders, you can't help your kids, you can't help your wife. So that's, it's selfish not to take care of yourself, I think, ironically.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I've been hearing so much about healthy at any weight, right? So it doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what you weigh, as long as you're happy and healthy, like that's kind of what matters. And obviously, we kind of all know that that's not really realistic, right? I mean, you're just less healthy at, 500 pounds than you are at 200. Right. So how would you address that kind of part of the culture war that it's ableist, or that it's saying something hurtful towards somebody who's 300 pounds to say, hey, if you get down to 250 pounds, you're going to feel better. That's the best way to attack your health. It seems like an obvious thing, but it's not anymore. Right. So how would you address that?
So, from my perspective, everything is about delivery, I believe. However you deliver that message will determine whether or not you're being abrasive or you're really trying to be helpful. The reality is I think that we need to use our own experience. Ronnie just talked about losing 43 pounds since he's been kind of going back and forth on this program. And really, to be honest, and Andy Frisella says it's not actually a weight loss program, but it is just a side effect of all the working out with no days off. But I will tell you, like, just for me at 26 pounds, it's a world of difference. And here's the deal. It wasn't until and I'm still not where I want to be, just to be clear, but it wasn't until I was really, where I would literally try to put shoes on, man, and lose breath. Right. That's when it was really like, okay, this is a problem. And I would have loved, in the position I'm in, a lot of people, to be frank and honest, to tell me what I want to hear. And there's not a whole lot of people that tell me what I need to hear. And I need men around me who will do that for me because I need that. Right. And so, my hope is that I would always want someone to be real and honest with me. And because I think that's what brotherhood is. I think that's what accountability. I said, I don't think there's brotherhood without accountability, but that's how I would go about it. If someone was kind of, and I've said it even as of late, listen, work out with me. Let's go together. We're all in this together. Like, I'm not where I want to be. You're obviously not where you want to be, but together we can keep each other accountable. We can keep each other, moving every day. Ronnie and I, we talk not just at work, but we talk together, all the time, because, man, we're weak, right? Let's face it. Like, we think, we may have done some really incredible things in our life. And yes, we may be able to bench a Buick or whatever, but the reality is we're kind of weak people. Right. And so there's times where I'd have to call, I'd call Ronnie and say, man, I don't know that I'm going to do tomorrow. Like, I just don't know there's a point in it. Right. And he would check me. No, man, listen, you said you would do this, right? Be a man of your word, be a man of action. And I needed that, man. And we as men need that, but we don't want it all the time. It's weird. It's like, we know we need it, but then we get offended and our pride and ego get in the way, and then we don't like it. I just think we got to realize that it's not an option to have brotherhood. It's not an option to be accountable to each other. It is absolutely mandatory that we do that if we're going to be the best version of ourselves for who we are, for Christ, and for our families. And so I think the way I would go about doing that is just, hey, let's go hit a workout together, and try to hope, talk through that as we work out together. I think it's easier to do that than if you went to, let's say, McDonald's, right? And talk about someone needing to probably drop a few pounds. But if you go to the gym and do that, I think it's a little better. But it's all under delivery, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had to that point, we had a guest recently, and he said, relationship is where you can kind of cross those boundaries, right? So, to a random stranger, it's pretty hard to have a difficult conversation, but, so I think that just doubles down on what you were saying about brotherhood is absolutely essential to having accountability, because otherwise you're going to just have people tell you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. So I'm thankful for these guys here because, just actually before we started, Brandon was holding me accountable. So, it's, you got to have it in your life. You got to have other guys pushing you to be better. So, Ronnie, what about you? What do you think, kind of on this ableist or, maybe fat shaming or whatever the words are today?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's really about, our goal is to lead by example. And so, from my perspective, we need to do what's healthy for us. And I think we can bring people along and they'll see our journey and see, that we're feeling better. We can now tell our story about, hey, I've lost 42 pounds. This is how I was feeling 42 pounds ago. And here's how I'm feeling now. And the process hasn't been easy, but it's been worthy of my time and effort. And much like you would share the gospel with someone, you would do that through leading by example. And it's not always the easy thing to do. But that's kind of how I look at it. Not getting into fat shaming people. Everybody's got their own battles and their own challenges. It's not my job to confront them about that or argue with them about that. It's my job to lead by example and hope that they go, I want some of what that guy's got. So that's kind of my take on that issue specifically.
Brandon, I think you had something.
Yeah, I love that you were talking about getting lost in the reels earlier, Jeremy. That kind of really caught my attention because it's so easy for us to stay in what's comfortable, even if it's not good for the benefit of ourselves. And dads will be really quick to make excuses on whatever, they don't have enough time. This is so busy. And yet they're the first hour of the day, they're scrolling on Instagram instead of being in the Word, or going out and hitting an exercise that wakes up their mind and their body. And they're just not creating enough balance because they're not seeking discomfort. Their brain is allowing comfort, and it's staying there. And I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, comfort is where your dreams and your growth goes to die. And
That's
so
right.
I think if guys would seek discomfort with purpose, with intentionality, in fact, one of the things I've been really wanting to record on is intentionality. Like if we would be intentional in every aspect of our life, in the Word and our exercise and self-care and care of our wife and care of our brothers and our friends and care of our children, if that intentionality is spread and focused in every single aspect of our life, we improve in all of those. It's when we don't be intentional that things suffer. And so I seek discomfort in everything. Like I will literally ask people at my work, hey, what can I do better? Like I want the critique. Like a lot of people, they run from the critique. They hate it. They can't stand it. It aggravates the heck out of them. It eats them alive. But me, I want it because I want to know what my weaknesses are. I want to know what people see and perceive as bad from me. And it's not because I'm wanting to be a people pleaser. Don't misunderstand that. But it's because I want to see something that I might not see myself. And I think a fresh perspective is always a great thing. But yeah, seeking discomfort, man, it's such a huge thing in creating that discipline. So yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, man, and I think the perspective. I think the way you hold on to that is to change the perspective of discomfort, and instead maybe one thing that kind of helps me is telling myself that it's uncomfortable because I've allowed it to be, but this is really what I'm called to do, right? So I got to quit looking at it as a struggle, right, or being or a level of discomfort, because then I'll probably won't be able to sustain it. But I think we have to kind of change the culture, and Ronnie talked about examples and being an example for our child, man. I've seen like one thing that sticks out, like when you go to restaurants, I just feel like anytime there's a lull in conversation, the first thing everybody does at the table, right, is grab the phone, like immediately. And I just feel like, and tell me what you all think, but I just feel like we've forgotten how to have like normal conversation these days. We're like, we don't even know what to do unless we're like communicating in reels, right? Like we're sending each other these reels to watch, and we're not talking to each other. We're literally right in the same, couch, as my wife, and we'll get caught up sometimes, man. And she'll send me a reel, I'll send her a reel, and I'm like, we're not even like talking right now. Like let's just talk, and create our own life reel here. But I mean, I think it's really easy and to get caught up, and I think the enemy has an opportunity, probably the best opportunity he's ever had, to create so much distraction. And, with kids, they want your time, and you just see a lot of times, and I'm getting better about it. But there was a point in my life, man, where I'd hold the phone up and I'd be like, well, 1 minute, wait a second. Like, just, and really I had no reason not to answer their question. And man, that really impacts our kids. I think sometimes, at least me, in the past, haven't given enough thought about how much our kids actually retain as far as how we behave and how we act. They know when they're kind of being ignored. They feel that. And I think sometimes we forget that they're actually little humans too that have feelings and are learning so much. And so, yeah, I think it's important to to make sure that we're having like authentic conversations with them. And again, to not let these distractions, get in the way of the things that we know we need to do. So, I should look forward to not having downtime to sit on the couch and go scroll through social media, but I should look forward to, working out and showing my kids that, hey, I get up, I get a routine, I go and I do this so I can be better, so I can better serve you and serve your mom and all that kind of stuff. I think that's the focus. Once we get back into focus, I think it's no longer a discomfort. Does that make sense? Like, I think if we look at it now, it's like, oh man, I have to do a program to do what I should be doing without a program, based on what we're called to do as men. Does that make sense? So I think it's that mind switch.
I mean, just break it down even to just like physical fitness, right?
Yeah.
The first time you ever start out, it's like super painful, super, it's like you're extreme, right? But as you level up in your ability, you can push yourself harder and harder and harder without it feeling nearly as hard as it did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they send people to ranger school and stuff like that, right? Is to push you to a limit so that everything you face after that is easier.
Right.
So yeah, if you apply that same mindset to every aspect of your life, it's the same way. I think Dustin had a question kind of dovetailing off of where you were going with reels and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was watching something by Jordan Peterson today, and he talked about how the path forward is going to be painful. The path to the left is going to be painful. The path to the right is going to be painful, right? So if you don't change, there's going to be pain there too. There's going to be discomfort. So you might as well try some change left or right, because there's going to be challenges either way. So I enjoyed it. So as far as social media goes, I think increasing evidence is showing that it is just as addictive as alcohol, cigarettes, other types of drugs. We're seeing increasing studies showing that it absolutely has addictive properties. So what are your thoughts on regulation in terms of looking at social media with different ages? For your own kids, for example, do you have an age that you're thinking about of when you'll allow them to have access to social media?
Ronnie, since you have younger children, I'll let you answer that first, and I'll go after you, man.
Yeah, so we haven't. My kids are still all under 5, so we have talked about devices. They don't have access to even tablets, really, and I know a lot of people let their children do that. But as far as I'm concerned, I want them playing outside in the dirt and mud and everything for as long as I can keep them doing that. So at the dinner table, there's no devices. They're not watching anything on YouTube or any of that stuff. So in terms of social media specifically, we actually just we had a pastor come to our church and talk about this. They have apps now, where parents can control and actually mirror the screens the entire time. That's probably the route we're going to take, because the reality is you don't get any privacy. At my house, it's communism around here, baby. When you become 18, you can get out there into the democratic republic that we live in. So that's probably the route that we're going to take. And you have to be very careful now with apps like Snapchat, where things disappear in seconds. That's dangerous. I mean, if that would have been around when I was in high school, who knows the kind of trouble I would have gotten in with something that powerful. Regulation from a government level, I'm pretty pro-freedom, so I don't necessarily like that. I think it is on the parent, and we as dads especially. It's on our shoulders to manage that. We've got the tools to do it properly. We need to utilize the tools. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think what's that?
As I say, you're next.
Oh yeah, man. So my kids, I have 22-year-old, 18-year-old, 16-year-old, and 14-year-old, and so now we're at the stage where it used to be kind of where Ronnie is. Now we're at the stage where I'm the oldest three are girls, women, really, at this point. And it's just important for me that they don't compare, right? I think social media creates an opportunity that we compare our lives to others, and just trying to let them know for the adult women. Now that's weird to say. My kids who are adult women now, I can't really do much about that. But my hope is that over the course of the years, I just want them to know that everything on social media generally is a highlight reel, right? And people can paint the kind of picture they want. It's very easy to do that. And just to not really take it serious, just to make sure that they know that, hey, if you need to be entertained, if you can do that in a healthy way, no worries. Just don't, look at certain things. It's really just going to create, conflict internally. But one thing that's different from when we were, younger is that if we didn't get invited to something, we just never knew it happened. Right. So now I know, at least for my girls, when they were, I still have the 16-year-old who is, this is a challenge for her, but my other daughters too, is if they didn't get invited, but they would go on to their friend's social media and see a live video of like a birthday party or some sort of party or whatever. And they're like, I can't believe they didn't ask me, that we have to deal with that these days as parents. And I think it's a different challenge than our parents had to, our parents and of course, long before us. And I wouldn't say, the last thing I'd want to do to, our parents is to pretend like it wasn't challenging for them. But I do think we have a different, more robust challenge, because now we're kind of trying to manage the world for them now versus it was the neighborhood back in the day, right? Like if, you knew where everybody was in the neighborhood because you'd see a bunch of bikes in the front yard, and it was okay. And you didn't worry about security generally. You just knew that the neighbors were going to treat your kids like they do theirs, and vice versa. But nowadays, we kind of got to try to, hold them back from all this information across the world. And it just makes it real challenging. It creates more conversations we have to have, right? More teaching, more training to say, hey, this isn't real. This model that you see, this thing's been photoshopped. They're using the best equipment, the best lighting, the best filters. They have the best plastic surgeon, all these things. Like, you just have to go over that time and time and time again. I think that's a challenge for us, but I think it's also a good opportunity, really, that our parents didn't have to really, use that as a teaching mechanism and say, hey, listen, and go to scripture and just keep reminding, every day at 7:15, I text my girls and I say, you're created in the image of God. And so you're perfect in him. And so if you think something's wrong, then you're saying that God made a mistake and he doesn't do that. Right. So I just keep trying to bring that home. My son doesn't, it's a different ball game for him. He doesn't necessarily worry about his appearance or anything like that. For him, it's just video games, right, and being cool. So he's not got to that point yet. But the girls have been a little more challenging. But yeah, I think that's the social media game has been challenging. And now, let's face it, as adults, we can be right there along with them, right? And they watch that and they go, and then when you're like, hey, your screen time, you got too much screen time, right? Apple tells you how much screen time you've used. That's how confident they are that we're addicted, right? Is that they can tell you how long you've been on the phone and yet you'll still be on the phone, right? It sounds like a bad sales technique for them to put a screen time app on the phone that they're trying to sell you, but they know you're going to look at it anyway. So I think that's a real good indicator of kind of where we are with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I was thinking, let's go around the horn on this topic on like kind of what we plan to do with our kids or what we already do with our kids. And then I think we all have a lot of follow up on the bigger topic of social media and screens and stuff. And I actually recently read a book that's dedicated to that topic. So I can maybe inject some high notes from that into this discussion. But so with me and my wife, our daughter's 7. She'll be 8 in August. I think Brandon might have froze, so we're just gonna drive on without him until he gets back. But when she was really young, we didn't do a lot of screens or anything. We saved it for trips, so if we were gonna go on like a long car ride or something, then she would have like her little Amazon Kindle thing. But we tried to keep it to a minimum and then kind of had some ups and downs in terms of how consistent I was in limiting screen time. But this couple episodes ago, we focused around the book. about, wow, I'm totally blanking, the coddling of the American mind. And near at the end of it, he talks about some of these studies where 2 hours maximum is kind of that point where it's not doing like psychological damage to young minds. And so I was like, ooh, I really need to be a lot more intentional about, like Brandon was saying, intentionality, about making sure we're really at a 2 hour mark there. Because she's 7, right? That's not an age where she should be spending all day in front of a screen, right? She should be playing, especially if it's sunny, doing things like that. So I'm still working on me to try and be a lot more involved in that. But one thing that I pay a lot of attention to is what she's watching. It's so easy, even on like Netflix or whatever, right? That you can even set up like parental controls and whatnot, but there's still some of the stuff that leaks through the controls that's like, she should not be watching this. This is absolutely terrible. So I'm very like honed in on, hey, what is that? And I'll watch a couple minutes and be like, we're going to change that, you know? So that's something parents, just to be aware of, dads especially. There's a lot of stuff that slips through the cracks there, even on, you know, like non-dirty sites or whatever. And it's not good for your kid. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Dustin, Justin, Brandon, what are you guys' thoughts there?
Yeah. So question maybe for Jeremy, you've got some older kids. What do you do if they're at their friend's house, let's say, and you know that you can't watch them specifically? So how do you regulate, you know, say social media and screen time and that kind of situation when you physically can't be there to see what they're doing?
Yeah, you know, that's a really good evaluation of how well that they've been trained. Really, like they know my stance on ensuring that they have boundaries, right? Not just on social media, but life in general. What depending on kind of how they're treated, kind of what, you know, the people they're with, and my hope is that through the teaching and through the continuous training on the expectations that they are, you know, they have some integrity and that they kind of follow through when they're not with us, but also know as a teenager, the last thing, I mean, you wouldn't probably call me a man of or a boy of integrity back then, you know. So I know they're not perfect, but my hope is that I've planted a big enough seed to where they go, oh man, I better get off this because you know. And then I always tell them, like, it's rude to your friends, right? If you're going over to someone's house or even a family member's house and they haven't seen you in a while and all you're doing is like putting your face in the phone, like that's a character issue, right? So we talk about that, like, you know, be a woman or for my son, be a man of character, you know, look people in the eye when they're talking to you, give them their undivided attention and respect your elders and all that kind of stuff. But when they're around, you know, their friend group, you know, I know that they push the limit. I think we all have, but my hope is that they come back around and they realize it and go, wait a minute, I'm getting, you know, I need to get back to the drawing board here. And outside of that, when they're not there, you know, that's the gist of it. Now we can go back and sometimes we do this too, not for the adults now, obviously, but for our younger ones, we'll look at their phones, right? We'll do that almost like they don't know we're going to do it. We'll just say, hey, bring your phone up. And then we'll kind of look through and have conversation if we need to. But otherwise, you know, we just hope that what we teach sticks, you know?
I love that. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I mean, a lot of my dad friends that I talk to genuinely believe that their children deserve some level of privacy when they're 14, 15 years old. And Ronnie, I'm with you, man. Absolutely not. You live in the communist states of Dustin, and when you're 18, you can get out of the house. And that's one of the benefits. I honestly think parents make it too good for their kids to stay at home. I want it to be a little uncomfortable with, you know, I want when my kid is 17 to be like, I cannot wait to get out of this house. My dad is so annoying. He keeps randomly auditing my phone. You know, he caught me looking at, you know, something I shouldn't be looking at. I want him to be excited to get out, get a job, and go work on his own. And that's one way to do it, right? If you say, oh, you get privacy, you get all the time in your room that you want, you know, absolutely not. No, you know, that's too that's too much luxury.
They'll never leave.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't leave. A bunch of, you know, 28-year-olds living with their parents. So, yeah, absolutely. It's wild.
Yeah, He's just like, hey man, God, I'm so sick and tired of my Oreos disappearing. I'm like, what the?
Cookie thief, yes.
You wait, Dustin. When he gets a little bit older, man, he's gonna be stealing all your food. He's gonna be in your protein. He won't just be stealing your junk. He'll be stealing all your good stuff too, man.
Exactly.
I think Ronnie, you were gonna jump in there. It looked like.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Dustin, that's a point that I hadn't thought of, hurrying them out of the house, you know, with all the communism. So I'm going to keep it up.
I guess I'll touch on this. Having a 1-year-old,
you'd think I would be out of this conversation, but I'm absolutely not. I was watching some of the shows, and I actually read an article recently, and I'm going to pick on one specific show. That Coco Melon show has a lot of like hidden stuff in it, and it really pissed me off, man. It got my blood boiling. There's one show that I'm going to give a lot of praise to, and I actually would love for this man to come on the podcast. His name's Joe Brum. He is the creator and editor for a little show called Bluey. Now, if you're a parent, you know the name of this show. If you're a young parent, excuse me, because it is an Australian cartoon that's based off of a family where they have two daughters, Bingo and Bluey, and it's just absolutely amazing. The dad's hilarious. He's got a great sense of humor. Like, anyways, I won't go down the rabbit hole, but it's wholesome. It's got a good point. It's a good show. It's got a catchy theme song and everything, and it doesn't drive you insane watching it. Let me say that. But yeah, no, that's one thing we have to worry about is screen time. I don't want my son being addicted to a phone every time he's upset. Hey, here's a phone. I don't like that. I want my son to be able to, kind of sit back and realize, hey, I need to like figure out my own stuff and how I'm feeling and kind of like learn to be independent and play by himself without a phone. And so that's one of the things my wife and I try to concentrate on. And then, like I said, we try to make sure that, he's watching something that is okay to watch. He's also obsessed with Miss Rachel, but that show makes me want to jump off a cliff. So she's great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna be a little bit of a contrarian here. We don't let Raylan watch Bluey. We didn't like the way that they talked to each other. It was disrespectful at times. So maybe I'll give it another watch and see if maybe I was being a little too honed in. But for me, like that, I think that's a big problem too. Is there's so many examples of where in shows typically kids speak very disrespectfully to adults and figures of authority, and it's like, you're 7, like your job is to say yes ma'am, yes sir, yes teacher, whatever, right? Not so that was my read on it. Maybe that's a bad take, but yeah.
Well, they're Australian, No, I'm just kidding.
That's all
I think it's a good show. I like Bluey. But to your point, George, there's a ton of shows out there that have, the vast majority of shows have the child talking to the parent in a way that's extremely disrespectful. There's a show that recently came out on Disney about a red bear. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or saw anything about that. I can't remember the name of it because I almost threw something at my TV when I heard the way that the daughter bear was talking to her parents. So, yeah, it's sad that they put that in shows these days.
Yeah, that's turning red. We screen every movie before our children watch it. I'm glad we screened that one because that one is absolutely absurd. For me to touch on some of this stuff. So one of the things, obviously, whatever chapter your kid's life is in kind of depicts on how you approach this, right? Like if your kid's a teenager, balance and moderation are going to be the key factors that you have to have with social media. And I love that you were talking about how it's a big comparison. And one of the things I have taught my son and my daughter both with anything on a tablet or screen is if you see something that you feel is not fair, comparison is a thief of joy. And I consistently hammer that in them. And like the other day, my son was like complaining about something, and my daughter looked at him and said, "No, Ben, comparison is the thief of joy." And he got mad at her because she called him on it, but like she knew it. And so, but balance, I think balance is a pivotal thing, because if you restrict something so much, so totalitarian wise, they rebel, or they have that urge to rebel. Whereas if you teach them how to do it responsibly and you teach them balance and moderation, I think that helps prevent that. So for me, it's just trying to create a striking balance. Like I'll let my kids watch shows, but at the same time, like Justin saw it, we were out at dinner, and my son was glued to his Bluey or whatever show he was watching, and I said, "You're finishing that up in 3 minutes, and we're putting the phone down because we're spending family time." And so everybody had to put their phones down, myself and Justin included. And so that intentionality was, had to be forced. But I think the dopamine, like Dustin was saying, there's an addiction factor there, and we can't let our kids, like my kid, the craziest thing is he can't stand to be bored. Like like it's uncomfortable, like it hurts him almost, because kids this day and age, they're so short spanned and short minded that any kind of sense of boredom is just like utter despair for them. And so that's a very disturbing trend for me. And I purposely push my kids to be bored, so that there's a balance there, because if there's not a balance, it's like, man, what are they going to do when they're adults and they can't stand 5 seconds of boredom?
Yeah, so let me jump in real quick.
Sure.
I recently read, I haven't finished it completely, but most of this book called The Glow Kids by Dr. Nicholas Cardaris. And some of the high notes of this book is that there's like overwhelming research that shows that brain imaging on younger minds shows the same amount of dopamine activation as sexual intercourse. So, 5, 6, 7-year-olds are having that amount of dopamine hit to the brain. Obviously creates, Brandon, like you were saying, they're addicted to not being bored. And so that's his whole book is basically talking about this kind of growing contagion. He calls it a digital contagion that's spreading through our society. And so this book specifically was written in 2016. And there's a follow-up book that I'm going to read called Digital Madness. And that came out just this last September. So that one will cover more on social media and stuff. But it was really interesting for me to just hear from a scientific point of view what's happening to kids' minds. And I think it's really shocking, right? An hour on TikTok, what it does to your brain is, they might as well be like snorting cocaine. It's insane in terms of the damage it does to needing dopamine.
George,
so I think that's why it's, this is something we should take very seriously. And a lot of times too, I think nowadays there's like the peer pressure thing. Oh, don't be the overbearing parent. Well, I feel like with technology, this is one area you should absolutely stand your ground on and not, cater to what's normal, because the norm is not healthy at this point, and we don't even know the impacts because social media is kind of a new phenomenon. Our kids are kind of the first generation that it already existed when they came around, like we kind of had it as we were later in life. So let's just stop there. And that's just some input from a doctor. But recommend the book. It was very eye-opening.
And George, is that in contrast to adults who don't have that same brain effect?
So I haven't gotten to the part yet where it compares adults, but I think your adult mind has more of a resistance to needing it as much, but I think it's still an addictive. You're still getting a dopamine hit, right? But you get it with your coffee, you get it with whatever, right? Everything you do is in a way a dopamine hit, but you as a grown adult have more coping mechanisms or discipline and skills in your life to go, ooh, maybe I'm on my phone a little bit too much, and put it aside. Whereas a 7-year-old who's addicted to TikTok or a video game, or whatever, right? If they've become so needing that every day after school or whatever it is, they don't really have the life lessons or skills yet to like address that. So that was really, the first book was on kids and the clinical research of what is happening to kids. I think the next one, Digital Madness, is more centered around society as a whole, not just children. So I'm going to pick that one up and get through it. But I do recommend Glow Kids for all the dads out there. It just to consider a point of view and maybe give you some fighting tools on how to make a difference. But it was beneficial to me.
That's a great. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
That's a great clarification, because it's important to know that the worldly normal is not the normal that we want to teach our children. So I loved that point, George. Quick dad hack for you guys: when your kids are just enveloped in their phones or their tablets, like great example, we were at my brother's house and they have this big moss oak tree or whatever kind of tree it is that you can actually climb on. The branches are low, you can climb on it, all that stuff. And I said, we're going to go for a walk. We're going to go climb that tree. And my son was sitting there just complaining and complaining and complaining. And I said, son, you're going to put that phone down. You're going outside and you're walking. He was moping. We got to the tree. And then it's like everything just kind of started fading out technology wise. It's like, man, we climbed that tree for like 30 minutes. Like they were, butt scooting and doing all that stuff and trying to figure out how high they could get. And man, technology wasn't even a process in his mind. It's like you could almost just see the dopamine kind of fall off, and like, nature kind of just reset him and brought him back to where he needs to be, So if you need to reset your kid from that frontal cortex thought process of just being so hooked on that technology, man, get them outside, get them in nature, get them playing, get them doing natural things with dirt, like, be imaginative, go make mud pies, so whatever, it could be something simple, just get them outside.
Yeah.
So.
Jeremy, go ahead, and then we'll go to Dustin next.
Yeah, no. I was just going to piggyback off of a lot of what you were saying. Brandon, we seek to be entertained, and so do our kids. And I believe if you're constantly looking at a phone, you're getting this plethora of information overload. Really, I don't know that our brains are even, conditioned to take all that information in at one time. They never really get to know who they are, right? So they start identifying with these videos that they see constantly. But then when you say, what do you want to do? They're like, I don't know, want to be a YouTuber, right? Or something like that. Nothing wrong. I'm not hating on YouTubers, right? But let's be a little more realistic in what you can do. And like you said, and when you look at some of these videos and some of these movies you all mentioned, either the child has no respect for authority or parents, or the man in the sitcom is the joke, right? Is the laughing stock, right? You look at King of Queens, you look at Friends, you look at Everybody Loves Raymond, all those kind of shows. The man's just the klutz, can't get anything right, lazy, doesn't do anything. And I think they had to pull that idea from what they've seen in society. And I think that's a real fight that us as men, but as fathers have to continue to combat. But at the same time, you're right, Brandon. When you get kids, like when I take my son, he would play video games all day if I allowed him to do that. But the process of getting somewhere outdoors, it's miserable, right? Like it almost makes you just want to like stop the vehicle and get out of the vehicle and take 10 minutes, because it just fires you up, because they act like it's the end of the world because you want them to go fishing or you want them to go on a hike, and they got brand new bodies. That's what I tell them. Like, you have a brand new body. You can't complain about this. Like, I'm broken and we're going to go do this. But at the same, yeah, they're brand new. So, but at the same time, when they get out there, like you said, Brandon, they get out there and they start picking up sticks. They start making a spear, right? Then they got these rocks and they want to skip rocks or make arrowheads, all those things. And I love that. And it's really just, that's how close we are, though, from changing the trajectory of how our kids develop. It's really a matter of us really creating and prioritizing that opportunity for them to get outside and do that. A lot of it, unfortunately, and I'm looking at myself when I say this, falls on me for not prioritizing and making sure that there is time to go to the forest and hike, or to go to the lake and throw a line in the lake and that kind of thing. So, but you're right. I do agree with that. Yeah, that's good.
One of my favorite episodes I've ever heard of Joe Rogan's podcast was Donnie Vincent. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He's a biologist and a massive hunter, and he knows an incredible amount about nature and everything else. And I'm telling you what, one, I need to find out what episode that was so that all of y'all can go watch it, because it was so good. Two, he talks about nature and what it does to the brain, and some of the studies that he was talking about as a biologist, and how it's helped not only like treating some of he had some friends and people that were suggested, and like patients of friends who are doctors, and anyways, he said send them in the woods. And so like they saw some pretty incredible results from people just getting out in nature, because that's where we're intended to be. And like the way he talks about it, I'm telling you, man, it'll light a fire in you, man. And even if you're not a hunter, you're like, wow, I need to go hunt. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, that's one of the cool things about nature, is that it literally resets our brain. So yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I can't wait to have my kid outdoors. I definitely don't want him inside on screens, but right now I don't have to worry about much. He thinks a rock's the most interesting thing.
Hey, that lasts longer than you think, though. You'd be surprised. My
I love
daughter
it.
still has a rock collection, and everywhere we go, she finds a new rock, and I'm like, we're not bringing that in the house. Please, just put it somewhere not in the house.
I collected them until I was like 9 or 10. I can't complain.
But Jeremy, back to the book Glow Kids, and then we're gonna go to Dustin.
Sure.
the reaction you talked about, how they get so angry when you're taking it. It's because you're taking away their drug. You know, if you take away drugs from an addict, they
That's
get
right.
angry, right? So it's literally the same triggers in the brain are occurring, and that's why that book was like so eye opening for me. It's not just like another thing. It to a kid's mind, it essentially is a drug addiction. The way that it alters the brain. So, Dustin, I think you were going to kind of talk about Cocomelon related to this topic.
Yeah, I've heard attention deficit disorder and depression referred to as lack of nature disease. It really is amazing, you know, what a walk in the woods will do. It rewires your brain. It's beautiful. But as far as Cocomelon, I'll get a little into the weeds here, so bear with me. There's a concept called the uncanny valley, which is crossed when something that's artificial intelligence that doesn't look like a human very much, like an R2-D2 droid doesn't bother us. But if it looks exactly like a human, like Terminator, it's very concerning and worrisome. That's what Cocomelon does. It crosses the uncanny valley. It's too real and it's creepy to watch. I beef on it like crazy. I can't stand it. And I mean, I don't know, you know, the message and all that kind of stuff, you know, is not great. But as far as the experience of watching it, of seeing these almost real people, the whole time is I'd rather just watch real people. Why is that like this AI creation? My concern is that kids will learn to love, you know, these not real, but almost real people. And that's problematic. So I don't know if you guys have feelings about that.
It's like, so like something dissociating them from actual people, like making them incapable of real interaction later in life type of thing.
100%, which is what we're seeing in Japan, right? Their population decline. There's a lot of studies showing that a lot of Japanese men are basically only attracted to these like hentai, like fake. I don't know if you guys seen it, but like Japanese animation are these women that look Japanese, but they have giant breasts and they're like these very augmented, weird looking,
massive eyes,
massive. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what Japanese men want. They don't want real women because that person doesn't exist, right? Their ideal of beauty is a fake person. And that's what Instagram is doing, right? I mean, these Instagram models that are millions of followers, everyone wants to watch them. It's plastic surgery, it's filters, it's our American version of that, which is women who don't exist. They're not real people. And if young men are watching that and making that their ideal, you know, if you're not attracted to women, you're not going to want to get married, right?
Yeah.
It's an existential problem.
Well, and reference this, I think is a good point. Reference that article you shared with us the other day, and it's not the greatest of articles, but it has some alarming statistics about I guess 20-somethings in America today, right, Dustin?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So a massive study came out last year. 68% of young men under 30 are single, meaning not just not married, but no girlfriends. Right. And so you want to talk about depression, antisocial behavior, all that kind of stuff. I mean, these are also men who don't have a lot of friends, you know, so social isolation is skyrocketing in our country. And I think social media has a lot to do with it, right? When you have Instagram reels that have instant, whatever you want, you know, that might entertain you, that dopamine hit. Your friends aren't necessarily, you know, as exciting as that next, you know, 10-second TikTok video, for better or worse, right? I mean, you guys are awesome, but as far as dopamine hits go, nothing can beat, you know, an artificial intelligence specifically designed to entertain me, right? That's hard to beat. And so
what you're saying is our dad jokes shorts are the best thing on the internet, and everyone needs to go watch them right now. Just kidding.
Exactly.
Sorry,
it's interesting. Dustin said Japan, though, because Japan actually has the highest suicide rate in the world. So that makes a lot of sense that you're talking about that.
Wow. Yeah, let's Jeremy, Ronnie, you guys have anything to add in? We've been hogging the mic for a little bit here.
I was going to say, I've thought that about Cocomelon before too, Dustin. I've always thought there's something weird about this show. I could never really put my finger on it, but I always thought that there's too much going on with the way these people look. So that's an interesting point. I would go back to Justin, what you were talking about, the outdoors and nature kind of recentering us. There's a great book by John Eldridge. I'm sure you guys have heard of it, Wild at Heart. And it talks very specifically about our connection with nature. And that's kind of by God's design. And so if you haven't read that, I highly recommend you check that out. Jeremy and I are going on a trip next week to Wyoming to actually go through that book again and actually reconnect in nature by fishing all week, trout fishing in the cold. It's probably not going to be super comfortable, but it is going to be in nature. And we're going to be able to kind of quiet down and get close to God that week. That's really going to be our goal. So anyway, I wanted to make sure I recommended Wild at Heart, because I think it is an important book for every man to read, especially dads. So
I'm gonna check that out. And just to kind of go back to what we were talking about with wilderness, that episode is 1122 on JRE. And there is he talks about a movie that he was producing at the time. It was his own movie and footage, but it's called The Other Side. Very, very cool stuff. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. 1122. I got it, man. I want to check it out. And, Dustin, the AI, I haven't paid as much attention to that as I probably should, because I keep hearing it more and more and more. But I think the difference is with the reels, you can get that same entertainment as hanging out with people, but you don't have the expectation and you don't have to do much, right? Like you don't have to reciprocate. You don't have to perform. Maybe you can just lay around in your pajamas if you want to and just watch these videos and get that same feeling as if you were hanging with your boys. But the problem with that is they don't develop authentic relationships that way. And we know as men that it's important that we have authentic relationships. And so then everything becomes in their life and in high school and just in, and socially, everything's like a transactional drive-by. And that's why you see a lot of kids, that's what they do. They, hey, look at this video. Oh, no, look at this video. Right. But there's never no, hey, man, how are you? Like, do you like to play basketball? I like to play. That's what we did. Right. We were like, hey, let's go play ball somewhere. And so they're really missing out. And so I think, what I try to stress with my son, especially because not only does he like, that artificial intelligence, but he's an introvert. And that's kind of like adding fuel to the fire, right? He doesn't necessarily like to be around people. And I wonder how much of that is actually he doesn't like to be around people, or he just hasn't been exposed enough to people, or allowed himself to be exposed enough to people where he's comfortable. So then all of a sudden we hear all these articles, we read these articles and hear, all this messaging about how kids have all this anxiety now, right? And I'm not, as someone who has dealt with anxiety, I'm not saying anxiety isn't real, but I think every human being with a heartbeat has some level of anxiety. But I think a lot of the, kids' anxiety is because they just haven't allowed themselves to develop and allowed themselves to connect with others and to really go through that process. So yeah, if you're used to watching everything life on a reel or Instagram, and then you go to church, right, and everybody's asking how you're doing and what your name is, and I don't know what to do. Right now I have to answer. I don't know. I think that's where a lot of the anxiety is that we're not putting enough boundaries on. We're ultimately, I think, in a lot of ways, society as a whole, devices have been a babysitter. Have been a very effective babysitter, and it's easy to do when you're tired, because let's face it, you get tired when you're raising kids. You're like, here, just watch this, right? Because you're needing that break. So I think that's also, I think it's a combination of things, but you're onto something there. That they can get all they need without any kind of expectation, and I think that's what we have to fight against.
Right, and that's spot on, because the boundaries that are being crossed are creating detachments, whether it's reality detachment or associative detachment. Like there's some kind of detachment occurring because they're not actually being forced, or they're not being socially prompted to attach to something. So the great example with the AI and the uncanny valley and all that stuff, like, they're being desensitized and detached from something that is abnormal. So like their brain, I guess, rewires itself and just says, okay, this is a normality type thing. And so, yeah, man, that detachment's kind of spooky, man, because it can bleed into other areas of life if we're not careful. And those boundaries are super important.
Well, the problem with AI is it's structured without controls, and it's incredibly intelligent beyond what we are, which is crazy that we can build something that is smarter than us. But it quantifies things so much faster than our brain could ever hope to imagine, and it does it in a way that is almost damn near perfect, which is what's terrifying about it. And on top of that, it's against us in some ways, and so especially your kids. And so that's why I tell people, like, keep your kids away from devices as best you can, because not only is it creating these voids, it's going to create a void emotionally in you. They're going to be so addicted to dopamine, they're going to be like, well, nothing makes me happy. That's going to
Right.
cause depression. And
Yeah.
then, you know, these kids who are introverted who do stick to the AI and get their fix from that, they're never going to go outside. And that creates laziness. It creates issues chronically within the body. And it keeps you from working out and doing things outdoors and the things that we are meant and literally designed to do. And the only way that I've ever been able to get rid of my anxiety is through exercise. That's a scary thing when kids aren't getting exercise anymore. And we actually had very, very intelligent gentleman come on a bonus podcast on Twitter Spaces with us. His name's Callie Means. And man, he really opened up my eyes on some stuff. And he kind of goes deep into what he's writing about. And he's starting a company. And he's writing it with his sister, Dr. Casey Means, and they talk about how there's preventable cellular dysfunction, which is primarily caused by the foods. And he's kind of been outing some of the companies out there who have been, you know, partial to that and have literally done things under the tables and behind people's backs. And it was pretty eye-opening. If you haven't watched that or listened to it, please do so, because Callie had some really good points. And I know, Dustin, you can probably touch on this a little bit about, you know, glucose levels, how kids were pretty much before the 40s and 50s had like 0%, almost 0% diabetes cases. And now they're in the 30 and 45%. Like sugar, honestly, kids' health today, based off the foods and the industries and the politics that are all involved in it, are probably the biggest existential threat to our children, 100%, because chronically down the line, it is what will kill them. Social media, dopamine, things like that. Sure. That eventually can be controlled if you have a strong will and a strong mind, or if you have discipline. But things that you've done to your body for years and years or decades and decades, that changes things. You know what I mean? It literally changes your DNA. And that's something he went into.
Well, I think it's almost like a 1-2 punch in a way. It's like this symbiotic relationship between what, you know, technology does to their minds, and then all the stuff, not all the stuff, a lot of the stuff that's being fed to them physically has a similar effect on them mentally too, not just physically. And so it's kind of just setting kids up for failure from before they're even 5, you know, potentially. So, yeah, let's kind of take the technology thing to the side now, and let's move more to the food stuff that we kind of touched on with Callie and Brandon. I want to kick it to you actually, and then let's go around for just reactions. You recommended that app called Yuka, Yuka. I got it too and bought it, and I've been scanning labels on stuff, and you would be shocked at stuff that you think is healthy that has like 5 or 6 additives in it that's just like straight up not, your body can't process it. It's not good for you. So Brandon, why don't you talk about your experience? Because I know you were just rattling off in our kind of little dad chat about all the things. And then let's just kind of go around on thoughts there.
Yeah. So one of the things I've always heavily researched is anything that affects me in a negative manner. And my children, most especially, like as a dad, one of our jobs is to be somebody who kind of forecasts and predicts things in the future. And so for me, I'm always looking ahead, like, what can I do to better my kid's life, whether it's health or physical issues. So my son is severely ADHD, and myself as well. I've had metabolic disorders. Like I'm pre-diabetic, and my cholesterol is an absolute dumpster fire. I'm actually on a statin now, and it's like I'm in great physical shape, but it's genetic and also a lot of food. So one of the things I did was I got this Yuka app, and I started scanning everything in my house. I just went bonkers with it, man. And I realized how many additives and artificial dyes and flavors and all these things that cause metabolic issues, all that stuff, are hidden in all of our food. Great example. Cheerios, Honey Nut Cheerios. What does it say on the front of the box? It has a heart shape, and it says heart healthy, may even lower cholesterol. Here's the craziest thing. Scan that box. It tells you that there are additives in it that can cause cardiac issues. I'm not even kidding. There's literally stuff hidden in it that do the opposite.
Not poison.
Like it's literally doing the opposite, and we don't even realize it. I mean, we're being lied to on a massive scale. And so one of the things my wife and I have done, you know, you were talking about 75 hard. Since January, I have had nothing but clean foods with no additives, no artificial dyes or flavors. Man, my blood glucose is normalized. My blood pressure is normalized. My cholesterol's better. I mean, granted, I do have some genetic disorders there, but it's incredible what I've seen in a difference in myself. And then we've literally been checking this stuff with my children, and my son's ADHD is almost cut in half. The symptoms are cut in half. Like, he's a completely different person when I'm not feeding him Doritos and all these things with just absolute garbage, like the Cetaphane K, I think is what it is, and a lot of the drinks. Like, just it's bonkers, man. Like, get the app. Another great example. My wife has been having just issues with her hair, like just bumps and itches and stuff. So I scanned her shampoo. Well, number one thing her shampoo had was something that replaces paraben. You know, you see all the paraben-free shampoos and conditioners. Well, the thing that they replace the paraben with is another chemical that causes contact dermatitis. So you're seeing people with issues in their scalp now. And so once we replace that, her hair is awesome now. And it's unbelievable the differences that just a little bit of research does. And I think one of the coolest things about the Yuka app is that it also gives you alternatives that are good, that don't have additives, that don't have high sugars and high saturated fats and all that stuff. So I definitely cannot recommend this enough. The great thing is the premium version of it is only like $8 or $12 a year. You get to select how much you support them. So it's dirt cheap. I mean, I'd put $8. I mean, you'll spend 4 times that going to the doctor because of the issues of the stuff you're eating. You know, so I definitely recommend Yuka, but wonderful app. Can't say enough about it. I'd recommend going through your house with it. You're going to be shocked at how much garbage is hidden in your foods and your drinks.
Yeah. And I want to touch on something you just said, Brandon. So, I mean, Brandon and I are identical twins. Okay. I've lived a different lifestyle than he has. I was a little healthier and more athletic growing up as far as like what I put in my body, and like was more self-conscious about my health. Brandon was more introverted. I was extroverted. Let me put it that way. I don't have the issues he has. What does that tell you? I mean, he ate a lot more processed foods and things like that than I did. And I can tell you that's the proof's in the pudding, man, literally, and pun intended. It just shows how much it really can truly change. Yeah. It shows how much dad joke. Yeah. It shows how much it can really change your DNA. And that's something that Callie kind of went down the rabbit hole on, and I'm not going to go on that now. I would love for him to eventually join us and talk about it. But yeah, I mean, I think that app is something that I'm definitely going to be using a lot, because I'm trying to focus my son's diet as, you know, we just give meats, vegetables. I hate him having sugar. I don't want him having sugar. I barely let him have a smash cake for his first birthday, which he went ham on.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's kind of thing. It's all things in moderation, right? That you don't have to be like crazy about it. But so Jeremy and Ronnie, you guys have any kind of thoughts or input based off what Brandon was talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think you all are spot on. And listen, I didn't think much about food really, because when you think about all the things that you have to think about every day, you know, food generally isn't one of them. But I think we're doing ourselves a disservice, and especially our kids, you know. And I think again, just like we've done, you know, devices when kids, you know, when they're I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Sometimes, you know, we it's easier to throw them a Reese cup or something like that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that every now and then, but I think sometimes we use those, whether we meant to or not, as tools to kind of mitigate a situation, because we're all just stressed out doing the things. But I know that when I started, you know, this 75 hard, I quit eating a lot of carbs. I kind of went down to about 10 grams or less a day, which wasn't. I learned later, about halfway through, it wasn't good when you're working out, you know, two times a day, 7 days a week. I was drained. But one thing I have to recognize, man, about, you know, a lot of carbs are sugar, right? And so the hardest part about this program wasn't the physical stuff, because I've done that kind of most of my adult life in the military, but it was the withdrawals from those kind of foods, right? And man, it was, you know, I feel like I'm a disciplined guy, and there's several times almost, you know, I've had things in my hand, and I just like, wait a minute, I can't do that, right? I can't eat that. But I noticed the difference in my body, like you are talking about, like Brandon's talking about. Like I thought I would tell the doctor over and over and over again, like I have IBS, like I may have Crohn's disease. You have to check this for me, and they were like, they would always talk about my diet, and I'd say, well, I'm about 70% clean. Right. And I thought that was really, really good. But man, I noticed that when I stopped eating that junk and I was eating, like you said, like real whole foods, I didn't have those issues. I didn't have digestive problems at all, actually. A lot of like acid reflux, all that stuff went away, man. Just overnight, probably in the first week, I started to notice those changes, and I just literally felt better altogether. And I think it was a eye-opening experience for me to know that, because some people, especially in the South, right, it's, oh, let the kids eat all the ice cream, right? Let the kids eat they're just kids. That's what kids do, right? And all that kind of stuff. It's kind of the culture, man, really. And so, but I think that's a terrible thing to do now that I've been through this, and definitely want to make sure that I limit, that kind of food in the diet of my son, especially because he tries not to be active, and obviously, inactivity and Doritos, as you say, Justin, are not a good combination. But I think it's deeper than just that's not good for you. And I'm glad that you introduced that app. I'm glad that we're talking about this because food oftentimes is one of the things that we don't really prioritize. Again, it's all about the kind of the 24-hour news cycle. Well, make sure kids are going outside for 30 minutes a day or hour a day, but we never consider what we're putting on the plate. And so anyway, I think it's worth noting that probably has a lot to do with how they behave, how they process things, how their brain develops, and we just don't give it enough credit.
Yeah. Ronnie, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, Brandon, thank you for that app, Yuka. I'm always about using the tools that we're given. I would say that culture has gotten a little bit better, maybe over the last 10 to 15 years, in identifying unhealthy habits in food. So, like, for example, the documentary came out, Super Size Me. I don't know if you guys remember that documentary.
Great
That kind
documentary.
of set a trend. And the food industry was smart enough to kind of outsmart that by creating then you see Whole Foods start getting big, and they're able to kind of lie. And so my opinion on this is I'm not about government regulation, but one area that I think we could do better in this country is to make food manufacturers and restaurants and these types of places, if you offer bad food, that's fine, but you ought to have to describe very clearly what it is that you're offering. And Cheerios is a great example of that. You're not the first person I've heard say that. They should not be allowed to say benefits to heart health. That you're not selling me a prescription drug here. You're selling me cereal. I don't need your health advice on my cereal box, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that from a marketing standpoint. So I think over time, hopefully we'll begin to see this kind of fade out of our society. In the meantime, we have to use tools like this Yuka app and do it ourselves. Again, this goes back to something that we as parents and fathers specifically, that we've got to manage, and it's difficult. It's something that we can easily overlook. But I think it's extremely important that we don't.
Absolutely. I'm going to go into something. So it's a big circle, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. So we're one of two countries, just two, in the entire world that has pharmaceutical companies with commercials. And the other is Australia, and it's highly, highly regulated with what they can say. Ours has zero. They make it seem like they're life-changing, life-altering. There's babies in the background. Everyone's playing, people kissing and hugging. Excuse my language, but it's bullshit. We need to get rid of pharmaceutical companies being able to come out there and make these drugs look like miracles, because they're absolutely not. It gets me fired up just thinking about it, and excuse my language, but it makes me angry because it's all part of this conglomerate or this group and this chain and cycle where it's pharma creating the cures for things, And the lobbyists and the politicians and everybody else are pushing with these other companies like Kellogg's or these other companies that produce things that have, DNA or gene altering side effects, which people just don't realize, or that cause cholesterol, that cause diabetes, that cause, all these different, because look at the amount of sugar people are taking today. I'm in medical sales. I sell the analyzers. I sell all the reagents. I sell all that stuff. And I can tell you right now, it is unreal how much we sell in just diabetic supplies. If I told you a number, you'd probably freak out. And it has grown exponentially every single year. And it's part of this big cycle. And I think that's something that is not being put out there. And I think it's because the media companies are probably involved with it, but not going too far down the rabbit hole. I know I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's true, man. I just wish dads would open their eyes and just realize that there is so many companies and so many people that are against us all in society today. And if people just realize, honestly, the food that we have that is good and that actually helps us is better if you just take the time to not be lazy and prepare it. I think that's the problem with our society. We have been trained to think everything needs to be done now. It needs to be instantaneous. And so we want quick fixes. We want fast food. We want easy meals. We want this and that. And that's the stuff that doesn't help us. If we could just take one day of the week, not be lazy, meal prep our entire week, just get it out of the way. And everybody, I'm telling you, everybody would see just huge increases in energy levels and their mental state and their health. And I don't know, man, it's just, it's sad. We literally have a society that's against all of us.
Yeah. Poor health is profitable. And as long as it's profitable, and it's profitable, not just in the food industry, it's profitable in the healthcare industry, right? It keeps the bills, keeps the lights on in the hospital, keeps the doctors paid, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's just facts. Some people would call it conspiracy, but if it wasn't, then we wouldn't allow certain things in our food that other countries wouldn't dare allow in their food. We got probably the most lenient restrictions in the way of food than any other country. And that should be alarming to us all, right? We talk about how, we love our people here, but how much do we love them? Do we love them enough to restrict some of this garbage that's basically like slow poison, right? It's basically like you're slowly poisoning yourself. But it's hard not to think that there's some intentional action behind that when nobody does anything about it except try to hide it. For example, the supersize, right? They don't call it that no more. Now they just say large, right? But it's still in the same box, right?
Menu.
Yeah,
Or diet or cooked with this oil. It's still a seed oil. It still will kill you.
Coke Zero.
We're never going to get that McDonald's sponsorship I wanted. This sucks, guys.
Yeah. We're not going to get that.
You just wanted the free cookies, you fat boy.
Yeah, exactly. Give me those cookies.
I think
I would love a discount code from Whole Foods though, if they're watching. Like, come on, right? My daughter calls it whole paycheck. Yeah.
Yeah. Ronnie, I think you had something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of this goes back to remaining disciplined in just about everything that we do. And it's one of the reasons that we created this Resilient Mind program in the first place, is to help people become disciplined, regain the discipline that they once had. And that goes to discipline in every aspect of your life. We're going to be talking about physical discipline, and we're going to be talking about food in that portion of the program. It really helps you. And I'm not saying that this is the end all be all program, but it's going to help recenter people and get them back onto a path where they have no choice but to be disciplined in all of these areas. And food is one of them, where they have to look at what they're eating. They're going to have to take some time and analyze everything that they're eating and putting into their body so that they can be successful in this program. So there's really no real solution other than using the tools that we have available to us and being disciplined in utilizing them. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in, Yeah.
Keep that crap out of the pantry. That's the only way to win, man. We're just not strong enough to have a bunch of Oreos in there. And it is challenging with kids, right? It is. But I will tell you, one of the things I noticed too throughout this process is very quicker than I thought. I stopped missing these things. I was really at first it was like, oh, it sucks. And then, maybe, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks, I was like, oh, whatever. And then what I started to notice is, for example, like different fruits were so much sweeter than I remember them being because, our taste buds were so used to this 46 grams of sugar in a Coca-Cola. But I just remember like the natural foods, like honey, for example, right? It was like, whoa, this is a treat. And I think that's the reason why these fruits are created and things like that is we're on overload, right? We get so many, flavors and so much, sugar. And when we eat real food, we're like, ugh, this tastes like garbage. In reality, what I noticed is that over time, when you start eating that, it doesn't taste like garbage. In fact, your body starts to crave that opposed to the Oreos, the ice cream. It's like, yes, I want these Brussels sprouts. What am I, that kind of thing. And I think it's just really like Ronnie said a little bit there, is that if we just give ourselves an opportunity to adjust, our habits, I think habits are a big part of this. I'm in the middle of that book, Atomic Habits, right? Who everybody's heard of at this point, but just create new habits. And then all of a sudden you don't miss what you don't have. But I think we shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, whenever we, we have a pantry full of, let's just, for example, chocolate frosted flakes, right? I guess Frosted Flakes now has chocolate frosted flakes, right? So it's just really, you set yourself up for failure. And then sometimes we're like, well, I have kids. Well, kids are your kids. And back to Ronnie's communism portion of raising kids, they eat what you provide, right? Like if you're hungry enough, like you'll eat. So that's just really a cop out. Well, I got to get these Rice Krispie treats for my kids. And then about 11:30 at night, when you're watching a movie, you're like, oh, I guess one of these won't hurt. And then, oh man, that was good. I guess I could do two of these, right? Then you go to bed. So anyway, you guys know the deal, but I think that's where we get ourselves in trouble.
The communist states of Jeremy's house. I love it. That's the way to be. Yeah. No, it's wild. The gut is completely altered in people who eat nothing but sugar versus someone who's mostly eating vegetables and meat. The microbiome, all the species of bacteria that are in there are totally different, in one person versus another. And so there's research being done and actually taking the bacteria out of healthy guts and injecting it into people who are obese and have problems. And they're seeing really good results with it. I can share it with you guys. It's really interesting. But I did want to ask you guys, as far as logging and having that discipline, right? As someone who's not as disciplined as I'd like to be, I personally have found pencil and paper and just writing it down and then sticking it on the fridge, kind of my best method. How do you guys like to track? Are you more of an app person? Do you like to use tech? Are you old school like me? Do you just keep it in your head? How do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I came up with, especially for 75 Hard specifically, I kind of came up with a diet plan before, we launched on this program. I have used apps in the past. What I find is that I end up not really engaging in the app, and then I kind of feel like I'm losing. And so I decided to cut the app out. I have a kind of a pre-plan of what I can and cannot eat, and I stick to that plan. So I'm not, I have a list, let's say, of foods that I can pick from and eat off of that list 3 times a day. And it's different for everybody. Whatever diet you choose can be something that works for you. It doesn't have to be a specific diet. Like Jeremy, for example, as he mentioned, was on a really low carb diet. I was kind of on a quasi keto style diet as well, but I allowed some carbs, good carbs, if you will, into that diet. So build a general list and sort of pick from that, and didn't necessarily get into all the details of the tracking. Although if you have specific goals, I think it's important that you do track exactly what you're putting into your body. So.
Yeah, I agree with that, Dustin. And one thing that I had to do is I had to, I use the KISS method to keep it simple, stupid method, because I don't have a lot of extra time to think about some of those things. So basically, if it's fried, it's no good. If it has sugar in it, it's no good. If it isn't real and it doesn't have, less than 4 or 5 ingredients, maybe 5 is even too high. If it wasn't real things that I could pronounce, then I wouldn't eat it. And I think that just really kind of, because even if I'd much rather overeat cabbage, right? Like cooked cabbage, than to overeat, sugar donuts, right? So I didn't really like limit myself. And so I was able to stay full without all that extra garbage. So that's just kind of how I did it. Is it fried? Is it, does it have sugar in it? Is it real food? And if it isn't, then I wouldn't eat it. If it was, then I would eat it. And so that was real helpful to start out with. I have used MyFitnessPal. I think that's the name of the app in the past, but like
app.
Ronnie said, I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. I was never good at like entering in everything, and then I'd be like, wait a minute, did I have two of those or did I have one of those? And then to be honest, there were times, and it's been years since I used that, but there were times where I'd go, does that really count? You know what I mean? And so I wasn't being honest in that app. So I just, when I decided to do it this way, I just did it. I just try to make it as simple as I could. So.
Yeah. And so my fitness pal is kind of what I use, but my approach is I just educate myself. Right. So, there are things that you will come across that when you're tracking, you will not realize how calorically dense they are. Great example, raw almonds, very calorically dense, but a healthy fat. So it's a great addition to your diet. So what I did was I got MyFitnessPal, and this was before they required premium to scan your stuff to make it easy. So like I would scan all my foods, I would track myself for exactly 1 to 2 weeks, and I would figure out, okay, what's calorically dense. I would pay attention to all the little details. I would say, okay, this is great for my diet. This is great. And I would just kind of keep it in my head. Okay, this is great. And then I go through the Yuka app and say, okay, this is clean. This is clean. This is clean. And I would get a list like Ronnie was saying. I would get a big list. And then basically based on that, I would build myself out different types of breakfasts, different types of lunch and dinners. And I would kind of keep it changing day to day. So that way the variance helps me keep where I don't get tired of it. You know what I mean? And to touch on that, I had to start retraining my brain to think of food as fuel and not as comfort, because I'm an emotional eater. A dad gets home, he's tired, he's not drinking alcohol, he's not drinking caffeine, he's not doing that stuff. What's he going to go to next? He's going to dump whatever he can find in his mouth, and he's going to go for food. So those are things that I just had to educate myself on and figure out where I was weak and what I needed. And then once I did that, man, I was golden. Like I can make my foods and I know they're safe, no additives. I know that they don't have anything hidden. I know that they're healthy. They're not processed, all that good stuff. And you can just kind of slowly clean things out as you go. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I think 10 p.m. to midnight is the danger zone. I mean, for me at least, if I can make it through that, I'm good. It's just, that time where you get that little you time or me time, however you want to say it. And you're sitting there watching, finally getting settled in and watching something. You're like, you know what? Those chocolate Frosted Flakes, they don't sound bad right now. You throw a banana in there, right? You throw a banana in there, it makes the milk chocolate, right? Like you got chocolate milk when you're done, and you start justifying all this stuff. But no, I think I like that. I like that you make a list, and I'd like to get to that. I think one of the things I'm going to do even after we're done tomorrow is I'm going to start dabbling into intermittent fasting. I've been reading a lot about that, and trying to do the the 16-8 to start, to see how, try to get used to that and make sure, I think that'll be helpful too. I hear that it creates a really good balance and it's really good for your insulin and all that good stuff. So I'm gonna dabble in that a little bit too. I think I'm gonna eat at noon to 8 and then cut myself off at 8. Because I'm a late night eater, and that's not good because we go to bed, right? And it just lays there. So yeah.
So I'll piggyback off you, then we'll go down to Dustin on the whole tracking thing. So I actually have done intermittent fasting for a long time. I'm currently not. I'm working a new diet cycle for a very specific fitness gain. I'm doing the opposite of everyone. I'm trying to gain weight. So I'm up 5 pounds this year, which for me is a lot. So I'm almost 170 now, but I've done intermittent fasting for the last 4 or 5 years, pretty much consistently, all 16-8, like you were just saying you were going to do, Jeremy. I love it a lot. I think it's really good. Mentally, I felt sharper. The only reason I came off of it right now is just for, like I said, very specific kind of like strength building goals. But I'll probably go back to it, down the road. But anyway, if you haven't done it before, give it a try, everyone. Highly recommend it. The hardest part, honestly, is just skipping breakfast, getting used to that a little bit. You can still have coffee with nothing in it. So I'm a big black coffee guy. So that's usually the biggest adjustment for people is not having any sweets or milk or whatever in the morning. But once you get past that hurdle, I mean, you're basically just home free to lunch, and you can kind of pig out at lunch, honestly, because it's good for your body to have a huge meal after a fasted state. So also, if you work out while you're fasted, your body is more focused on, the trigger of the stimulus of the workout as opposed to like digesting food simultaneously. So. But I kind of do a mix of what you guys are saying. I don't use any apps for tracking my food. I just plan ahead. When we go to the store, I only buy the things that I need for the diet parameters that I'm following. Basically, I have either chicken or steak with virtually every meal, a little bit of rice, a little bit of salad. Sounds boring probably to most people, but I eat that pretty much every single meal. I've done that for years now. And then we kind of do the avoidance thing too. Just if we don't buy the bad thing, I don't have to worry about like being tempted at home. So you win it at the store, and then you don't have to win it later. So that's pretty much what we do.
That's
Justin,
right.
what about you, man?
Yeah, so for me, it's just discipline, man, is key. I mean, I use the apps. I use Notes with the sorry, Dustin, I thought it was me. Anyways, I use the Notes app with Siri. I just say what I ate, and that way I can come back to it. But the biggest thing for me is no alcohol, complex carbs only on days I do or train legs, which is 2 or 3 days a week, and then just meats, specifically fishes, chicken, things like that, and an absolute ton of those. And then green, hearty vegetables, leafy vegetables, things like that. But yeah, at the end of the day, I just drink an absolute ton of water, and I try to practice intermittent fasting as well, because it really, really does help.
Good stuff. Good to know.
Yeah, I think for me, I do the paper and pencil tracking, but I think the component that I'm missing is the big picture, like you guys are doing, where you go, all right, I've got 3 months or 75 days, whatever it is, of this is my plan. And these are the big components that go to it. And for me, I've just been doing day by day. All right, I'm going to eat this today. And then I don't necessarily keep up with it all that well, because it doesn't feel like there's a big goal that I'm working towards. But I really like what you guys are doing with the hard 75, because it means that I have more to work towards by the week, by the month, versus just trying to do it day by day. So I think that's going to be a component that's going to help me achieve success with that. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up.
All righty. Justin, I think you said you had a different topic you wanted to approach, but before
I
wanted to do a quick time check.
Yeah,
quick time check with Jeremy and Ronnie, just to make sure you guys are good. We're almost hour 45 into this. Just want to make sure you guys aren't need to hop off to the families or anything. Good to go.
No,
all right,
I'm good, man. I'm loving this. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, Justin, shoot.
So the biggest thing that I mentioned was water. I drink. When I'm disciplined and actually focused, I drink an astronomical amount of water because it flushes your system, it gets things right. And to actually touch back on what Dustin was talking about, microbiomes in the gut and eating healthy. So what people don't realize is the lining in your gut, when you have that good bacteria or the bad bacteria, it can get trapped by the processed foods and all the different things. And it actually creates this layer that like keeps all the bad stuff down against your gut. And that's where you're getting a lot of those problems. So if you're drinking a lot of water, flushing the system, get that out, and then doing probiotics and eating healthy, clean foods, you're actually replacing that gut biome. And then eventually over time, you're healing yourself back up. And then that just kind of goes through, as Callie said, the tree. You are the tree, and it goes to each branch of the body. And that's kind of where it goes through. But yeah, water would be my thing, because it's what keeps me from eating crap I shouldn't be eating. It flushes the sugar out, so I'm not craving it. But yeah, that would be my biggest pro tip for dads. But I guess to kind of change gears here, my question for you guys is, for the vet dads that listen, what are the programs you guys have? Is there any program, like we were talking about nature? Is there an outdoor, like Nature's Get Lost program that works for them? Kind of go and elaborate on that for us.
Yeah. So one of our programs is Operation Jeep Build, right? And so what that is it's a vocational training program in automotive repair. And what we do is we seek out these old Jeeps that maybe have been sitting in someone's driveway for years and that want to donate. And we take these Jeeps back to the auto shop, and we have ASC certified master technicians who train veterans who are interested whether recreationally or maybe they want to begin a career in automotive repair. They get OJT, right, on the job training, real time training on how to essentially we break these Jeeps down to the frame and we rebuild them into these off-road machines. And as we rebuild it all the way from the frame to the lift kit and to paint and to welding, all that kind of stuff, when we get done with that, we take these Jeeps out to the fields. And we go to, we have about 700 acres in southern Indiana. One of our friends owns that property. He lets us go out and we just hit the trails, right? And so we spend all day out there, and it's a family. Everything we do, by the way, is family oriented. We want to make sure that not just the veteran gets what they need and that connection and camaraderie, but that spouses and children do as well. So unless it's something very specific, and usually that's only one portion of one of our programs where we don't invite for a session, we don't invite the family, because generally it's unpacking, combat trauma and things like that. The family's always invited. So we go out, we go through these trails, and then there's a big clearing in the woods, and we throw some hot coals out. We put a grate over it, and we just cook on the ground, right? So we make all this grilled chicken and we make food, and we just sit around this fire and eat and get back in the Jeeps and, hit the trails again. But it's just, there's something about, being out there in nature. And then of course, you have kids while we're eating and kind of, talking and connecting. You have kids running up hills or swinging on vines from trees. They're just doing what kids should do, right? And so, we really try to get out in the nature as much as we can. That's just one of the ways we do that. But also, we lead hikes. We do ruck marches. We like to do that sometimes for a cause. Sometimes it's just small groups of veterans in our organization. We serve about 7,000 veterans just in this region. So sometimes they'll create their own event and go do a hike somewhere together. But we really do promote being outside, in the summertime, and we're getting ready to get started soon. Even in the late spring, we'll start doing like monthly cookouts, and we'll go to different parks around the state, and we'll pick a pavilion right next to the playground so the kids can play on the playground. The parents and the vets, they can connect. And we have a big grill out there. We invite someone to play live music, acoustic set, right? And we just break bread together and have fellowship and just connect. But the kids are able to connect too. It's important for us to try to create these same level bonds with our kids as we have as either being in the military or just in general, just having those authentic relationships. And we believe that if we can create that opportunity for kids to become best friends at 7 years old, right, and they grow up together, they'll have a support system when we're not here anymore. And that's kind of the forward thinking that we have as an organization. But yeah, we're always interested in getting out into nature and just really getting back grounded into the playground that God created for us, right? Like he knew what was best for us, and we just need to get back to that. It's when we venture outside of that and we start to do man-made creative things that sometimes it can either be really brilliant or it can get us in a lot of trouble. So yeah, those are some of the programs that we offer. Of course, we do the equine facilitated mentoring, which is always outdoors in a barn, in an arena. And so we're always outdoors doing that too.
Yeah. And just one other question. So how can non-veterans get involved? What can we do?
Yeah. So really, just show up, one thing we don't do is we don't have anybody standing in the front going, hey, let me see your DD-214 or your ID card, right? Here's the deal. In reality, we're a ministry, according to the IRS, we're a nonprofit, we're a ministry. And I don't really, it doesn't matter to us whether you served in the capacity of wearing a uniform or maybe you serve in some other capacity. We're people. We want to take care of people. And so we never really vet anybody in that way. If you feel like you want to be there, then there's some reason you need to be there. And so you're welcome there. So that's really how we do that. We just want to get the community connected, right? We want to build community within a community of like-minded people who are equally yoked, who want to create a really good experience for their kids, for themselves, and to really basically do life together. That's our motto, right? As an organization, is doing life together. And that's what we really want to do. And not just on the weekend or not just when times are great, but we want to be in the trenches together when we need to be, but also we want to lift each other up when we can as well. So I think that's what God would want us to do. At least that's what he says in scripture. And so we're just trying to live that out the best we can as an organization.
That's awesome.
Ronnie, I want to kick it over to you. What are your favorite programs that you guys run or that you've been a part of?
So I think everybody's favorite is really the equine program. That's been my favorite. We recently did a survey to try to get some feedback. It seems like we get a lot of people that like the connection events where, the cookouts. Those are always fun, where it's live music and you get to really interact with people and get some one-on-one conversations going, which I enjoy. I mentioned in the beginning, I have a vocational diploma in cars, and so the Jeep build program is awesome, and everything that Veterans Club does and everything we do intentionally, and we do it well. And so I like all the programs, and I like them as a participant and as a volunteer before I ever became involved with Veterans Club, on a board level. And Jeremy didn't mention, we also have, we do some disaster relief too. And Jeremy and I, we spent a couple days down in Eastern Kentucky following probably one of the worst flood disasters this century. And so we get these veterans to come down and deliver supplies, and we're talking no electricity, 100-degree heat in early August in the mountains in Eastern Kentucky. And so we get to spend some time outdoors doing that and also serving people well. And so, for me, everything that we do at Veterans Club, we do well. I'm glad that I can say we now, being part of the organization, but from the outside looking in, it's really always been that way, so.
Awesome. Jeremy, let's go to you first. Closing thoughts on what's the top one or two things from your perspective as it relates to improving our culture, kind of the overarching topic for tonight. Leave us with your best advice.
Yeah, man.
Ronnie, we're coming to you next, so get ready.
Yeah, yeah. Ronnie gets opportunity to think about this, but no, man. I think number one, being centered on Christ and what He calls us to do. I think you can't go wrong. It's a foolproof plan. It's whenever we try to do things on our own accord and with our own abilities or what we think our abilities are, we get in trouble. But I also think leading our families by example. I think walking it out though, versus just kind of being a talking head, right? Just in your actions. I think people respect that more. I know I do. Like, for example, if anybody with the memory really, with the ability to memorize things can memorize scripture, but how much are you walking that out in your life? You should be able to see that in the life of someone. And I want people to not say that I'm a believer, but I want them to say that, no, he is a follower, right? I think you can be a fan of Jesus or you can be a follower of Jesus, and I'd rather be a follower. But I just think setting the right example for our kids, but not just what I learned is there used to be a comment that was said like you do what I tell you to do, but I think kids do what they see us do versus what we tell them to do, and I think it's a lack of integrity if we don't try our best to walk it out. And if we fall short, I think we owe it to our kids as well to have conversations about, hey, look, I fell short today. I want to tell you what I did. I want to be honest with you and say, hey, this is the situation. This is what I could have done, but this is what I chose to do, and this is the consequence of it. I think too often we want to be the hero, and we only want to talk about the success. But I think we do our kids a disservice when we don't also let them see us fail, and to call it out and say, hey, just so you know. I know that you think that we get it right all the time, but we absolutely don't get it right. And it takes the pressure off of them to be perfect. And then it takes the pressure off of them to, when they do see things on social media and they go, oh, well, that's not real because I know no one's perfect, right? Or that, I just think it sets us up sets the right tone for the family. But I just, for men, especially watching this and dads, just, don't sleep on the fact that one of the biggest responsibilities we have as men and as parents is to be bold in our faith and be bold in leadership and to accept responsibility instead of running from it. I think that's something we need to teach our children too, is don't run away from responsibility. desire it, actually accept it and use it and grow. So the biggest takeaway, is really that, is to just live out what you say by example, to make sure that we're not, saying one thing and showing the other.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, Ronnie, good luck. You got to follow that up.
Yeah, well, yeah. The whole time he's talking, I'm like, oh, that's what I was going to say. No.
Yeah.
For me, I think if I could think of any advice to give, I think that as men, our curse from Adam was passivity. And I think that we still struggle with that pretty regularly. And so my advice would be stop being passive. Look at areas in your life where you're being passive, because we all do it. And any man that says he doesn't is lying, because it's been happening since the garden. And so stop being passive. Take action. Take positive action in your life, build your discipline, change your family. It's your job to do that. You're the leader of your household, whether you like it or not. You're going to be judged for that one day. So stop being passive. And to Jeremy's point, you can't do anything without Christ. So the second piece of advice I would give would be to lean on Christ, seek his guidance in everything that you do, and he'll help you become unpassive. And he'll show you what you need to do and give you the tools, and maybe even give you some challenges that make you, move forward on that path. So those are the two pieces of advice that I'd leave you with.
That's awesome, man. Thank you. All right, I'm motivated. Let's do another hour. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
No sleep. Yeah.
No sleep.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, guys. Thank you for that. And let's go Dustin, Justin, and Brandon for closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, I love it. I would say lean on your friends, is the biggest one. I so often cannot figure out a problem. And, I'll hit you guys up and say, hey, I'm dealing with this weird issue. What do you think? And it just it's incredible. If you don't use your resources and your network, you're completely missing out. There are so many friends and good dads out there. And but lean on the good friends, right? Don't call that friend, who's going to give you bad advice. Make sure you got to identify, your guys who are doing well and have some good ideas there.
Thanks, Dustin. All right, Justin. Got to enunciate my J better.
Yeah, that's on me earlier. I don't know, man. I agree with all your points, honestly. I think centering Christ, I think, honestly, just being present is something I always try to hit on, man. Like, we talked about society. We talked about, screen time, even my 1-year-old sees when I'm not staring at his eyes and when I'm staring at a screen instead, or, if I'm doing something that, is not something for him, he takes note of that. And that's just at 1 year old. I can't imagine what it's going to be at 13, 18, 20, So I would just say be present in every moment, because you never know if it's your last. So.
Good deal. Brandon.
Yeah, be intentional. Like I was saying earlier, intentionality matters, and it reflects into everything that you do. So be intentional in every aspect of your life. If you don't know what aspects I'm talking about, sit by yourself and don't outsource, and dive deep into it and write a list. Really examine yourself. God calls us to examine ourselves like we're looking in a mirror, and to really root out and kill the bad parts of us. And, in my experience, it is tough to do, and it's painful sometimes, but absolutely necessary. You have to be willing to see yourself die thousands of times to become the strongest version of yourself. So for me, it'd be intentionality for sure.
Awesome. And then I'll say, so this is actually ironically came from a reel that Brandon shared with us like 2 weeks ago. But it was about a parent saying their phone died at like their daughter's or son's practice or something. And so they had to watch the practice. And all the other parents were kind of like doing this the whole time. So that like made me think to be a lot more intentional about paying attention, letting my daughter see that I'm paying attention. And so today she had her tumbling class, before we did this. And, I just put the phone down, and after every single attempt at whatever exercise they're trying to learn, she would look at me and like see if I was watching to give her like the thumbs up or whatever. And, most of the other parents, they're just head down on their phone. And so, it's really just pay attention in those small moments. I think those little moments, it's kind of a mix of what Brandon and Justin were saying, is it's being intentional, but it's also being present. But those little moments are the ones that I think stack up in the long run, where your kids are gonna, remember, like, man, my dad was always there for me, and he was always really involved with whatever it was. Even if you have to travel a lot or you are away from home a lot, those little ones that matter to them the most are the ones that you really need to fight for and discipline yourself in. So felt that one kind of matched what we were talking about. But Jeremy, Ronnie, any last closing things you want to plug for Veterans Club, or things that we can be looking out for, ways we can get involved in the coming months here? And then if not, we'll close.
Yeah, I'm just, if there's any veterans, first responders who are watching, and want to get connected, it's important to note that although we're based in Kentucky, we're not limited to Kentucky. If there's something you need, get a hold of us. We have a lot of partnering agencies around the country, and oftentimes we'll come to you or create an opportunity for you to come to us, and in whatever way we can. But stay connected, and then really just want to encourage men to find other men who are equally yoked to do life with, because like Dustin said, it matters. Who you have around you absolutely matters, and when we go off on an island by ourselves is usually when we get in trouble. And so it's just important to know that having authentic friendships isn't optional. It is a mandatory thing. You don't have to have 20, right? In fact, if you're lucky, you'll have 3. But you need to have someone who can hold you accountable, but also encourage you, and also be there to be a voice of reason when necessary. But as far as Veterans Club goes, you can check us out on our website at veteransclubinc.org. We're on all social media platforms. We're very active. We had 213 events last year. There's only 365 days. It was a pretty incredible year. So we're always doing something. But man, I'm so glad to be able to do this podcast again with you all. I really enjoy. It doesn't even seem like a podcast, just because I just enjoy the conversation with you all. So thanks for opening this space. Thanks for the mission and vision of the podcast, because it's so needed in our society. And so I'm just honored to be a part of it. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, guys, and I would just say, thank you. It's been great to be here. This has been a great podcast. It's been, very conversational. I've really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Ronnie. Really appreciate it. So one more time, everyone, go check out Veterans Club. I believe it's veteransclubinc.org. You can find them there. If you can't help physically, I'm sure they accept donations. So please consider that. It does take money to run events. So without further ado, then we'll wrap this one up. Thanks everyone for listening. Please follow our channel, subscribe, whatever, on all the different socials and Spotify. And Jeremy, Ronnie, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate the time, and God bless you. And we'll be hopefully soon here. We'll have to link up and do some joint event together.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's make a plan. I appreciate you all. Be praying for you.
Appreciate it. All right. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of the Present Fathers Podcast. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.